or tactical team.
Hey there guys, this is me, Mr. Malorian, and this is going to be an Orc Tactical Team. And today, we're going to be talking about kind of a little bit more of an interesting game theory that I don't think a lot of people normally think about. And what it really comes back to is, again, going to our old topics, and we're going to be talking about like 2D models and terrain and 3D, all this stuff. And we're not going to really get into that. I'm not digging up that one again, but in having that discussion, somebody brought up a very interesting thought that, well, if you're going to go this far and try and go with 2D and simpler and blah, 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 well, should we just play on a board that's a grid? Wouldn't that make things more clearer and more obvious? And, of course, we're not going to that, but at the same time, I kind of thought, like, isn't the game already in a grid? Because, really, when you really bring it down to its essence, right, all these models are going to have threat ranges. There's so much you can move, there's so far you can attack, there's so far you have range in your gun, whatever. And really the distinction is in inches. So at all times when you're trying to figure out where you can go and what threats what, there's really like an area of, okay, you're out of threat, and then you cross that 1 inch and it's like, okay, this is the area we are in threat. And then when you start thinking about this, and if you were to go and draw all these lines on the board, it almost would make an actual grid that you'd be playing to. So with that then, I want to be kind of talking about the 3 stages that I see people going through that really deals with how they're dealing with that kind of grid and the idea of where your models are dependent on that one grid, and how the people that actually go and put more thought on this, of course, do much, much better. Now, the first step, number 1, is going to be I don't care. It's the guys that's like, hey, I can run 12 inches, so I'm going 12 inches. Hey, my guy can charge 11 inches. Are you in 11? Nope, then let's run forward, right? That type of simple stuff. And it might be, I mean, again, with all these things, I'd really hate to say that this person is a level 1 and a level 2 or level 3. Realize that all of us, depending on how tired we are, how serious the game is, how many drinks we've had, we're going to play at different stages. So try and avoid while I'm explaining these and like, yeah, this guy's the number 1 and this guy's the number 2. That's not what this is about. But what this first step is about is a whole idea that, yeah, they're really not thinking about those threat ranges. We're living now in a game where it's not Mark II, where you might have to try and guess some things, or try and eye it, or maybe try and like measure from your caster this far and try and guess what that is, or whatever. Everything is known. You can measure whatever you want at whatever time. So really, if I want to make sure that your guys can't attack me, well, I can just stay out of your threat, right? I can maybe go up 12 inches because my model is allowed to go 12 inches, but if your guy has 10 inches of threat, if I don't want to give you the alpha strike against me, I just got to go another inch back to be that 10.1 or whatever it is. And at this stage 1, because either they're having fun or don't care or whatever it is, they don't take advantage of that. There is no grid to them. It's just a board and you have your movement and off we go. So that's step 1. Step 2 then clearly is the next step where you are starting to care about that. You're saying, okay, this is your threat. You can come up to here, you have this much movement, you can add a charge, the weapon's range, you have this spell, and it'll start measuring all these things out. And what they'll start doing is drawing a safe line, saying, okay, these guys here can charge this far, so there's that line, and then, okay, these guys over here, they can charge this far, so there's the line. If I connect this all, here's my little line of safety. I might put dice there or something, you know, some templates, and I'll then run my guys up just behind that line so you can't attack anything. And again, that's not always going to be that way. You know, sometimes you just need to get in there, or sometimes whatever. However, there's a certain point where you notice the person is no longer trying just to randomly push stuff forward, and now they're saying, okay, this matters. If I just run up and you charge me first and kill off a third of my army, this is not going to be good for me. So how about I stay a little bit further back, don't give you the extra round of attrition, and that makes me a better player. And it obviously does, right? What you normally see is the people who start doing this, they're now the ones who are going to be more competitive in a tournament scene. They're going to be ones who are starting to win as many as they lose, or winning more, or whatever. They're definitely doing a lot better in the game. However, it's taking more time, right? You're needing to calculate. You're needing to stop and say, okay, this thing, again, has this movement, charges to here, has this range on their weapon, and these are the different abilities and spells that could modify this, and taking time to measure that out. And it does add time to your clock, and it does hurt that way. But again, for your attrition advantage, it can be huge. So that sounds all well and good. And I think that most players you see are in that level 2 of thinking, right? With this whole grid idea. So if that's level 2, where level 1 is doesn't think about it, level 2 is thinks about it, well, what's level 3? Well, what level 3 comes down to is realizing that it's not a line, and realizing that there's now spheres of threat for every single model. And if you were to go and on every single model out there, put down a ring on each and every single one to see what its maximum threat was, possibly with and without spells, well, you'd start seeing where they all cross over. And clearly, spots where like almost all the rings cross over, you do not want to be there if you want to live, right? That's where they can bring the full bearing of their army onto you, and that's a really bad place to be unless you're trying to win the game, and there will be no counterattack. But what about the other areas? The other areas where there's maybe just a little bit of overlap with a couple of the rings, or maybe there's just one ring. And what this really comes down to is getting that extra advantage and being able to push a little bit further up the board. And again, could be situational. It could be that, again, you just don't want to be giving up that attrition advantage. But at other times, being a little bit closer can be a difference between winning or losing. Let's give a kind of example here where, let's say it's a caster that really wants to get up there and really do some work. We're talking about somebody like Butcher 3, or we're talking somebody like, even though maybe like Karchev or Striker 2, one of these guys who normally get up a little bit further up and do a little bit more work themselves. Now, clearly, the further up that you are, the more work you can get done. So if you stay and make that little line and say, that's the line, well, there you go. That's the line. You're not getting any extra inches. However, what if you did this? What if you went to that line and said, well, if I did all these spheres of influence, or spheres of threat, and I come up 1 inch, well, how many more guys can shoot me? Just this one guy? Well, that's not really a threat to me, and I can now add an extra inch to my threat next turn. What if I go another inch? Okay, a couple more spheres I'm walking into. Now there's 4 guys that can actually shoot me. But really, if I work out that math, unless you roll like crazy 6s, I'm still totally fine. 1 more inch? No more spheres? Damn, that's a free inch. That's awesome. 1 more inch? Okay, now that Jack, I'm in his sphere of threat, and that's not safe. The math is now that I'm in big trouble, so take another inch back. And what you've just done there is added 3 inches to your threat, and even though there's a little bit of damage that might come your way, and let's just make up numbers and say there's a 2% chance you can be assassinated, those 3 inches of extra threat could be the difference between winning or losing. It could be the 3 inches that get you to destroy that Jack you need to kill, the 3 inches you need to go to kill the caster, to get in and get on the scenario, whatever it is. Those can be critical. And again, this might happen with just your infantry as well, right? Where if I can go another inch forward and then there's like 1 guy that can shoot us, well, there's 8 of us. So if we can walk up and now we're in 1 sphere, well, that's okay. Or maybe we're in a sphere of 2, and so 2 of you guys can shoot, but it means you still have to hit, you get past armor. But now that we're an inch farther, or 2 inches, or whatever you're gaining from this, we threat so much more. And so that can be a huge difference. Again, we said number 1 is just the guys go like, let's go, push things forward. Step 2 are the guys who are calculating what that threat is and drawing the line. And all of a sudden now, this is another level of thought and analysis and saying, well, even though that's the safe line, what are all the spheres? what are the threats, where are the overlaps, and where can I actually take a little more risk to get a little bit more inches in my own threats. Now, clearly, that just sounds like, wow, I should be doing that all the time. That's amazing. However, let's also keep in mind the time. So, of course, if you're pushing forward, that's super, super fast. If you go and you're trying to calculate some threats, that takes some time. If you're going to do the spheres, that takes even more time. And so it really could depend, and it might be a judgment call. It might be a judgment call saying, you know what, I don't think that extra analysis is going to help me now because whatever the situation is, I'm just going to not go to that level. Or it could be, I'm going low on the clock here, I do not have time for this. Or it could be a thing saying, I have been up for 36 hours, I cannot think, I'm not even going to bother to go to that level, right? Whatever the reasoning is, you're making a choice to go and pick one of those 3 levels. So what would I like to get from this and kind of like pass over to you is, first of all, to realize that there are those 3 levels. And when you're going into a game, make a conscious choice how far you think it's worth going. A casual game that doesn't matter, you're probably going to go with level 1 or level 2. Is it something now where it's a little bit more serious? It's in a tournament? Okay, you want to go 2 at least, maybe even 3. Top table? Yeah. Okay, we're going level 3 on this clock becomes a real issue. So there you go, guys. Hopefully this was interesting to you, talking about these spheres of threat and how the board, even though it looks like it's a nice clean mat, when you actually draw out all those spheres, starts making a grid, and the game gets a lot more complex and interesting. So there you go, guys. If you have any comments on this or counter thoughts or anything, please post it down below. I'll comment and reply back, and otherwise, we'll catch you later. Bye.